Count 1, aggravated murder. Kouri Richins is guilty of aggravated murder. Count 2, attempted aggravated murder. Kouri Richins is guilty of attempted aggravated murder. Count 3, insurance fraud. Guilty of insurance fraud. Count 4, insurance fraud. Guilty. Count 5, forgery. Kouri Richins is guilty of forgery.
So my absolute favorite moment from Utah versus Kouri Richins is this.
We have no murder weapon. Like, you haven't found anything that was connected to Eric's death. No fentanyl in the house, correct?
There was a boatload of fentanyl in his stomach that came out of the house with him.
Other than this, what's in his stomach? Did you find anything else that had fentanyl in it?
No.
Okay.
Okay, some people might think that wasn't the mic drop moment that a lot of us thought it was. I was waiting for someone to say Eric Richins had a bunch of fentanyl in his stomach, and that was actually found in the house inside Eric Richins' body. But for those who need to see tons of exact evidence, here are 33 reasons to find Kouri Richins guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. We're going to talk about reasons. 33 reasons. We're going to be rational. Today's closing arguments, it's Monday, March 16th. The closing arguments offered by the state, they offered a lot of more than mic drop moments. And one of my favorite moments today was when Judge Mrazek, don't you love him, he told one of Kouri Richins' lawyers that her objection during closing arguments from the state was overruled. He's obviously the kind of judge who doesn't like objections going on during closing arguments. I remember one case where they were objecting willy-nilly. It might have been with the woman who killed Mariah Wilson, the cyclist. It might have been during her trial. Objections up and down during closing arguments, and I know some judges do not stand for that. But let's talk about Kouri's story. I have been researching this woman for like 3 years. She's finally about to meet her justice. What will it be? Well, Kouri was born April 20th, 1990. So Kouri will be 36 years old next month. She's charged with aggravated murder, attempted criminal homicide, financial crimes up the wazoo, but mainly it's the death of her husband that we are seeking justice for. His entire family, all of his loved ones, his co-workers, I'm sure. So Kouri was arrested and booked May 8th, 2023. It was 1 year after her husband's mysterious poisoning death. I filmed my first video about her May 12th. Only a few days later after she was arrested, that's when I first heard of this case. May 12th, 2023, almost 3 years ago. I had to look back at my own playlist. I was like, wow, see how I used to look? It's so funny to look back. But this would be the 25th video in my Kouri Richins playlist I'm filming about the case on this channel. So I know a lot about the entire case. I've been waiting for this case, obviously, for years after delay and all of Kouri's antics while she's been in jail waiting too. So let's talk about from the beginning what I'm talking about and go over these 33 reasons while we are on this break. We are on a break right now, waiting to hear the defense put on their argument. What will it be? Will it sway a jury? When you're probably watching this video, it will probably be during the time the jury is deliberating. I'm kind of anticipating them not coming back too quickly. There's a boatload of evidence to go over in this trial. So I feel like they're going to take their time, perform their due diligence, even though a lot of people, I believe, think she's guilty. I did a little impromptu Twitter poll. I like to see what it's up to, just to, get the lay of the land, get a read. Right now there have been 180 votes. 91.1% of people say she's guilty. I didn't break it down by charge, and I didn't add, like, will you think there'll be a hung jury or mistrial or any of that. I was just trying to get a feel for what's out there. So, let's talk about how Eric and Kouri met. So it was the little meet cute at Home Depot. Will she have an ugly end and end up in prison? Kouri met Eric Richins in 2009 while she was working as a cashier in Home Depot. I did the math. I was like, wow, she was only like 19. So 3 years later, they had a child in 2012. They married the next year, June 15th, 2013. Now, Kouri's accused of poisoning Eric with fentanyl. Authorities say there was 5 times the lethal limit of fentanyl in his system. Now, while I admit it's true, there is no smoking gun in Kouri's case. You know, some people need to see Kouri, putting the fentanyl in his drink. We don't have that video evidence. Now, perhaps there is more circumstantial evidence than direct evidence, but it's still evidence all the same. Will it convince Kouri's jury to come back with a guilty verdict for Eric's murder? Either way, the Utah mother won't face the death penalty. She's a mom of 3. They have 3 boys. Can you believe it? She won't face the death penalty, but she is looking at quite a number of years in prison. I mean, she's still young, only turning 36. Now, closing arguments are today. We've already seen the state do a bang-up job. They put up an excellent case. Even if they didn't read the text messages and all these things from Kouri's evidence side during the trial, they just let the jury read them themselves in their head. At least they put a lot of that evidence in the closing arguments. So how long will the jury deliberate? And can a reasonable jury get there for aggravated murder? Now, we don't have it like the case of Dr. James Craig. He was actually caught on video in his, kitchen administering all this stuff that ultimately killed his wife, Angela Craig. We don't even have, in Kouri's case, traces of fentanyl on these Moscow Mule drink cups or lemon drop shot cups she claimed they had. Kouri talked about, this was cleaned up, that was cleaned up. They don't have all that. But what we do have here are just 33 points that I've found. In my opinion, if I were a juror, it would lead me beyond reasonable doubt in Kouri's case. So let's go. We'll fly through these. Number 1, Eric Richins warned multiple people before his death that he believed Kouri was trying to poison him. Now, according to court records, Eric suspected she did try to poison him multiple times and said, quote, she was to blame if anything happened to him. These are all in court documents, all the allegations against Kouri. Now, despite Kouri's friend, Allie, we saw her, she was pretty popular. She was testifying, Eric was laughing about, Kouri trying to kill him. Kouri trying to poison him. Despite people like Allie who are still buddy-buddy with Kouri, apparently, others did not believe it was a joke. Eric's family believed him. It wasn't a laughing matter. The court documents say, according to a sister, Eric and his wife went to Greece a few years ago, and after his wife gave him a drink, he became violently ill and called his sister saying he believed his wife had tried to kill him. That's years ago. This doesn't come up often in the case. Some people think, Eric's sisters just had it out against Kouri. They just didn't like her. Well, no, I don't think that's true. They probably didn't like her, but all the other evidence of Kouri's financial crimes, her feelings about money, about being trapped, all of it point to a woman who felt desperate enough to potentially take her husband out. On Valentine's Day of 2022, his wife brought him a sandwich. This is exactly from the court documents I'm reading, which after one bite, Eric broke into hives and couldn't breathe. He used his son's EpiPen as well as Benadryl before passing out for several hours. Now, even in closing arguments, the state went over Kouri's text messages during this time, and Eric talking with a friend, not knowing what to do, Kouri kind of advising him, just take a nap, just take a nap. Maybe you'll feel better, not, let me come home, check on you, take you to the hospital or something like that. No, they talked about Kouri just distancing herself. And it makes me wonder exactly how many times did Kouri try to end his life, allegedly. Number 2, Kouri stole money from Eric. Financial fraud informs the motive for murder. One of the motives. A lot of fraud here. To go over all her financial mess-ups would be crazy, but the main ones were this $250,000 HELOC. So in early 2019, Kouri used a power of attorney to obtain a $250,000 home equity line of credit. It's the HELOC on Eric Richins' premarital home without his knowledge. So I'm like, wow, 10 years after meeting him, Kouri was already practicing financial infidelity. I mean, I get it. Husbands and wives might not tell each other every dot and tittle and, $500 spent here or, $100 spent there. They might not share accounts, but who's going to create a $250,000 HELOC without telling their spouse? Whew. And Kouri's attorneys made it seem like, well, don't you sign for your husband or wife? Well, sure, husbands and wives can sign for each other. For example, taxes or whatever, something's due and, you're there with your CPA and they might say, sign for your husband or sign for your wife, and they're all aware of what's going on if they're not physically there. This is not that. They have to be aware of it. You can't just take a $250,000 HELOC and say, well, I'm his wife, so it's okay that he doesn't know. Anyway, there was a check for more than $23,000 payable to Eric. It was meant to pay for his business taxes for that C&E masonry successful business Eric had. Anyway, Kouri worked in the office. She misdirected it according to court documents that same year. And then there was another time in September 2020, Eric learned Kouri had withdrawn $100,000 from Eric's bank accounts. It's pretty obvious, especially at the email we'll read at the end, Kouri didn't want to just be a stay-at-home mom. She wanted to prove she could be a successful realtor. She wanted to buy and flip houses, but her finances were a mess. Oh my goodness. Number 3, Kouri lied in her journal writings about how she reacted to Eric's death. They went over this in court too, and I caught it before, even closing arguments happened. The body cam videos we watched proved otherwise. Kouri has one version of events, and then the body cam shows the true version. Kouri wrote that the EMT told her he didn't make it, we did all we could do. I lost it, Kouri wrote. She's writing in this journal. This is her version. I lost it. I immediately ran to the bathroom and began throwing up, which is something they went over saying that's something you probably see in the movies, and they really do that too much in the movies. Remember how Caleb Flynn, he kept drinking water over there in Tip City, Ohio after his wife was pronounced dead. She was shot, Ashley Flynn. He's puking all over the place. Like I've seen in different body cam videos, even with Peyton Shires in Ohio, different people, it seems like they're trying to make themselves throw up, and then Kouri is like saying, oh, I threw up. I immediately ran to the bathroom and threw up. Except the expert on the stand in Kouri's case, the EMT, was like, well, no, people don't really throw up when you tell them their loved one has died. Of course it could happen, but it's not common. People like Kouri and maybe Caleb and Peyton, this is what I've seen in the movies. It's like a distraction. Don't bother me, I can't answer any questions. I'm too busy puking. They think that's a reaction that shows their grief and how overcome they are and how worried they are, so maybe that's why Kouri wrote it. But she didn't puke. They showed the body cam video. She said she lost it. I immediately ran to the bathroom, began throwing up. Kouri spoke about crying, pacing, dropping to her knees, praying. I didn't really see her doing that. I mean, I saw her sitting on the phone, holding her face in her hands, looking down, but she's claiming she was praying. Kouri was even more dramatic. In this journal entry, she said, I was curled up around the toilet when my mom walked in with the EMT lady. I could tell she had no words and just rubbed my back. Didn't see any of that. She was not curled up in the bathroom somewhere at the toilet. We saw Kouri there in the living room, unless this part wasn't caught, of course, on body cam, but she was in the living room. And her mom walked in, and her mom was sitting kind of far away from her. In fact, people commented so much on how much they weren't like gripping and holding and hugging each other and crying. They kind of sat apart. Now, of course, her mom may have rubbed her back at some point. I don't know, but it's a whole different picture that Kouri is painting here. She said, I could tell she had no words and just rubbed my back. I was distraught. So was she. We couldn't even speak. Her mom didn't look distraught at all. She reminds me of that Momo. I'm not insulting the woman, but she really reminds me of like that Momo, the way she's looking with, like she has big eyes there in the video. Kouri says, I began screaming at the EMTs that they weren't doing it right. I screamed, cried, and just sat in the corner of the room by my dresser, rocking back and forth. I don't know when any of that happened, really. I mean, Kouri, I think she was rocking a little bit, but she's putting on this big dramatic scene that didn't happen. Number 4, Carmen Lauber, Kouri's quote-unquote drug dealer housekeeper. Carmen, I know, she was a mess. She was all over the place, but she did have Eric's obituary on her bedroom wall, and it was something poignant about that. Now, I get it. She did clean, allegedly, for Kouri. Carmen knew Kouri and Eric, I guess, but it's something about her having his obit on her wall, and the way Carmen spoke about, I believe she felt guilt for providing Kouri with the hookups to get these different drugs, illicit drugs, and then later finding out that it caused Eric's death. So that was kind of like Carmen's inspiration to stay clean on that wall. It meant something to me. And I know a lot of people saying, what does this have to do with, Kouri was never caught on camera administering fentanyl. They'll say they didn't find fentanyl anywhere in the house. I get it. But we have to take the entire case, so much of this evidence, to come to a logical, beyond a reasonable doubt conclusion. For example, let's say if it stormed last night and I just slept through it all. Let's say if I didn't hear it, I didn't see it, nothing. But if I walked outside today, again, like they say, and if the ground and the grass are soaking wet, I can a reasonable person can ascertain it rained last night. I don't have to look at my Ring camera footage to verify it rained. I wouldn't have to be awake and outside or looking out my window to see that it rained. Reasonably, because of the after effects, the circumstances, everything, the fruit, the whole situation, the way the rain clears, everything looks so clear and washed out, and even the smell in the air, all of that afterwards, a reasonable person can assume it rained. That's what I'm doing here, these 33 things. All of them let me know, how could a jury get to guilty? Number 5, Carmen Lauber told law enforcement that sometime in early 2022, before Eric died, Kouri either called or texted her to ask that she procure some fentanyl for the defendant. Now, whether Kouri literally said that word, fent, it does say that she said it. She said the Michael Jackson stuff. Like they talked about in closing today, Kouri might not have known anything about procuring this stuff or what the name of it was. Her motive was to get rid of this man by any means necessary. Is it the Michael Jackson stuff? Is it the blue, the purple, the red, the who knows what kind of pills? I would be just as green. I have no idea what's what. But there's plenty of evidence to back up Kouri and Carmen Lauber texting a billion times, despite people deleting it, trying not to get in trouble. Carmen introducing Kouri to other people and all this stuff. There's evidence. There's evidence of, their movements that corroborate a lot of these allegations. Number 6, Kouri pretended as if she was doing CPR on Eric while on the phone with the 911 dispatcher. After weeping and claiming, I don't know how to perform CPR, and she protested, I can't move it, talking about her husband, a human being. However, when first responders arrived and performed CPR for real, Eric began kind of foaming at the mouth and expelling blood, and it indicated CPR likely had not been performed on him. If she had really been doing it like, that 911 call, like she was instructed, go 2 inches deep and I need to hear you. And on that 911 call, the results prove she probably didn't perform CPR at all. She knew he was already gone. She didn't want to save his life. Kouri was calm and she sounded weepy and not rushed, and all that stuff expelling from his mouth would have already expelled if she had done some effective CPR. The state put a countdown showing how long it took Kouri to respond to the 911 dispatcher's commands to get Eric down to the floor to start CPR. The dispatcher herself seemed more concerned about saving Eric's life than Kouri was. She's like, it's dead weight. That's what Kouri's saying about her husband, the father of her 3 children. But in her text message to her best friend, Chels, Kouri was like, I pumped so damn hard, screaming for him to come back to life. But Kouri never even broke down and admitted, like she would later claim, the pain pills were really for Eric. At first she claimed they were for one of her clients, some investor. And when that investor didn't take the stand, obviously, Kouri's like, they were really for Eric. He had this pain pill addiction back in high school, and maybe she was trying to insinuate it came back or something. No matter what, Kouri wasn't desperate enough to say, EMTs or 911 lady, this is what really happened. He really did take something. Let me tell you. She didn't say, say any of that. She was just quiet, like in the timer. It took like 5 minutes to get her started, more than 5 minutes to get her started performing CPR on this man. I mean, heaven forbid, if you ever heard like this 911 call I made during a medical emergency for a family member, you would hear me saying, oh, Jesus, 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 you know, and I'm just like, oh, I didn't have to perform CPR, thank God, but I was very worried. Kouri is just like, yes. You know, she's like, everything is like, it's no big rush. You know, I get not knowing how to perform CPR. Some people don't. I get it. But there's no urgency in Kouri. There's so much urgency in the dispatcher. Kouri's like, I can't. I don't know how. My husband, he's cold. You know, I mean, it was just very slow. Number 7, within 48 hours of Eric's death, Kouri accomplished many things per her sister in her victim's impact statement and evidence presented way back during the pretrial hearings. Kouri hired a lawyer to file a lawsuit. The day after his death, she still closed on that house. That was her main goal. That Midway mansion, that Midway monstrosity out there in Utah. She'd been talking about that house forever, you know, her accomplishments. She even threw a little party and they're like, oh, it wasn't a party, it was a memorial. Sure, I get it, people grieve differently, but was Kouri really in mourning for Eric, or was she glad he was gone? You know, she was off in the corner. It was weird. Number 8, Kouri told her boyfriend, Robert Joshua Grossman, it would be better if Eric would just go away. She asked Josh how it felt to kill someone. Now, he was in the military, you know, a military man. Respectable person, it seems, but then Kouri is asking him about killing because of her own feelings. And then Kouri told her friend, Becky Lloyd, in many ways, it would be better if he were dead. She was telegraphing her wants and desires all over the place. Number 9, Kouri punched Eric's sister in the face and neck multiple times, according to her sister, Katie. She testified at a pretrial hearing. And that's when she realized all the monies that, you know, Kouri was expecting all this stuff to flow right to her and the house. You know, just get everything. She could just maybe move into that Midway mansion guest house with her boyfriend or something. But Kouri realized it wasn't going to happen the way she expected, and she lost it on Eric's sister. Number 10, Kouri put together a golf tournament 2 months after Eric's death on what would have been his 40th birthday. Told his family they were not allowed to attend. And she even put like banking information like, oh, the Richins family, this is where you can send donations. So when she didn't get the money she was expecting, I guess she was trying to go a different route. Number 11, they said Eric had 6 or 7 life insurance policies on himself at the time of his death. Now, Kouri still believed she stood to inherit loads of money. She didn't know about the changes Eric had made. You know, she wasn't the beneficiary anymore. Number 12, Eric prepared for his ultimate poisoning death. He visited an estate planning attorney. He made moves to take care of his 3 boys and prevent Kouri from getting all the money. On October 13th, 2020, Eric consulted an estate planning lawyer. So this is like, what, nearly 2 years prior to his death, or more than a year. I wonder how long this has been going on, and when was the Greece incident where she allegedly might have put something in his drink? Maybe if Kouri had done anything to Eric's drink in Greece years ago, before this one, was she hoping, oh, his death can happen in Greece, we're not in the United States, maybe the investigation won't be as thorough? But Eric informed his lawyer that he wanted to protect himself in the short term from, recently discovered and ongoing abuse and misuse of his finances by Kouri. He wanted to protect his 3 children in the long term, ensuring that Kouri would never be able to manage his property after his death. On November 3rd, 2020, Eric executed several estate planning instruments, including healthcare directive, durable power of attorney, pour over will, the Eric Richins Living Trust. All of them he appointed his sister, Kouri Richins Benson, his agent, fiduciary, trustee, to the intentional and purposeful exclusion of Kouri. He transferred his home and his business interest and removed Kouri as the beneficiary of a $500,000 life insurance policy. So he put it all in the trust, excluded Kouri. She didn't understand this until after Eric's death. Sadly, he was doing the right thing protecting himself, but sadly, Maybe he didn't realize it was even more of a danger in Kouri's mind because she still thought, oh, all this will come to me if he's dead. This is pretty sad and manipulative. Number 13, Eric's sister said Kouri started telling her 3 boys that his side of the family, they don't love you after Eric died. They don't want you. Just so manipulative and sad. Number 14, Kouri was planning. She booked a romantic vacation with her boyfriend before Eric's death to take this vacation after his death. So the departure date was like April 29th, 2022, and she booked the trip in December 2021. Of course, again, all of these aren't direct evidence, but these 33 reasons show me, just like all the hints of why it rained last night, these all show me how you can get to a beyond a reasonable doubt guilty verdict. Number 15, Kouri claimed initially she had never heard of Fent until cops searched their house. Number 16, the body cam video again captures weird movements by Kouri, covering her face, looking down, pretending to be crying, but I don't see like going to get tissue, and you know when someone's really crying and they get the tissue or they're wiping anywhere, their sleeves, whatever, and they're blowing their nose or stuff like that. I didn't see it. Number 17, the walk the dog letter she wrote in jail. It features Kouri giving written directions to her family, instructions on what to do or say. She's manipulative, what to do and say. Kouri provides this narrative about Eric getting these edible marijuana gummies in Mexico. She's going to talk about that in an email to detectives as well. Oh, maybe those were laced, you know. She's just throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what will stick. Allegedly, Kouri told her mom to have her brother, Ronald Darden, falsely testify that he knew that Eric scored drugs and pills from Mexico leading to his death. Now, when they first found this walk the dog letter in September 2023, prosecutors accused Kouri of trying to, induce her friends too to testify falsely at trial. Some of them like, oh, one of them's going on Good Morning America, maybe she can say this. Kouri was never charged with witness tampering. But my point is, why do any of that? If you had nothing to do with poisoning your husband, you wouldn't need to direct your family and pull all these puppet strings. You would just tell everyone, just tell the truth. You guys know I had nothing to do with it. Number 18, Kouri's original criminal defense attorney, Sky Lazaro, dropped her. I don't know why, but I kind of see why now. Number 19, Kouri's defense rested without putting on a defense. Kouri didn't take the stand in her own defense. Now some claim, oh, this is a smart move. If the state has not proven their case, I don't know, but was it really because of Kouri's guilty conscience? And would it come shining through if she took the stand? Does she know she has no defense? They say truth is the best defense. Why not get up there, try and prove all these people wrong? I know the burden lies on the prosecution. I get it, but I think the state, again, put on a great case. When I wrote, are we watching the same trial? Some people can watch the same trial and just, if they don't literally see Kouri pouring poison in his drink and watching Eric drink it, they won't believe it. Even if they had that, some people are just, maybe they always want to be contrarian. They will always believe like Kohberger's innocent or whomever, O.J. Simpson, and they will always not look at things reasonably. Number 20, who was this alleged investor suffering from the back pain that Kouri purchased the drugs for? Of course, Richins approached Carmen, I guess, in early February 2022, asking for a favor to obtain pain meds for this unnamed investor. And she reportedly asked for something stronger than the Michael Jackson drug. Alrighty, I'm back. I was just talking about the Michael Jackson stuff. Well, that's been hours ago. We are now officially in verdict watch in the Kouri Richins trial. And I have a new favorite kind of mic drop moment. Brad Bloodworth. He's the Summit County Chief Prosecutor in Utah, And I have a new favorite trial moment from his rebuttal closing arguments. He showed a picture of Kouri the day after her husband died. He said, "People grieve differently. There's no ancient artwork of that photograph." It was quite the dig against Kouri Richins' defense team. He shows a photo of Kouri kind of ducking and smiling and hiding in the corner while people are doing shots. March 5th, 2022, in her home, the day after her husband died. They were coming back hard in their closing arguments. It was a dig against Kouri's defense team, putting up these ancient artwork photographs or renderings of women grieving, and she was trying to explain away. I keep thinking of Lisa Simpson because they compare Kouri's attorney to Lisa Simpson from The Simpsons. She gave a really long closing argument. I mean, they both did. Kouri's defense attorney had a lot of lies. Some of them to me were outright lies, in my opinion, of how she's painting Kouri as this great grieving mom who just wanted to do the right thing by her boys, and sure, she had an affair and that's why she deleted stuff off of her phone. But the ultimate clap back was she's not a good writer. So let's go through the rest of these. Number 21, Kouri's Google searches prove she was trying to hide something. Can cops force you to do a lie detector test? Or if someone is poisoned, what does it go down on the death certificate as? Not if someone overdoses or if someone accidentally overdoses. She wrote poisoned, and of course she misspelled it. She did not spell it correctly. Number 22, Kouri often mentioned feeling trapped in her marriage. To a lot of people, a variety of people testified. So if Kouri had this trapped mindset, she married young, she had 3 boys, she felt like Eric, for some reason, held all the cards. She was not being successful in her real estate venture, despite what her attorney tries to get the jury to believe. That was one of the lies, in my opinion. It's like Kouri was always profitable in all her house flipping ventures. And, she has her master's degree. I was like, she does? But that was a lie to me. She said, she was always profitable until after Eric's death. Well, I don't know there. But with Kouri feeling like she was trapped for some reason, why would her mind allegedly tell her your only way out is to do away with your husband? Maybe Kouri felt because there was a prenup, if she went through with a divorce, she wouldn't get as much money or property or anything as she thought she would have gotten if Eric were just gone off the face of the earth. Now, number 23, Kouri wrote in her third-person letter about her life during a Sedona retreat she took with her friend Allie. So in this letter, it was very telling. Kouri talked about how she grew up poor. She had to scrub, snooty rich people's toilets in Park City, and she vowed that, she would one day own property like they did. It makes me feel like Kouri would do anything at all to never be poor again. That letter was referenced. In the closing arguments, they delved into Kouri's history a little bit. I know it had to be probably embarrassing for Kouri if she's in high school, whenever she was scrubbing these people's toilets, I believe she said high school, and her mom has this gambling addiction. That's what Kouri admitted in her own letter. And imagine, if you're in high school and it's your friends, what if she had to go to her classmate's home and she's there helping scrub toilets? They're rich in Park City, or people's teens she might have known, and she's there scrubbing the toilets. Of course, that would make her feel some type of way, but it's sad that I believe it warped her thinking into, I have to be rich. The state's opening and closing arguments said, Kouri was severely ambitious. She was like, I'm going to get it by any means necessary type of person. Of course, a lot of people want to be prosperous. We all want to do well. We want to have great health. But most of us out there are like, I'm not going to end someone's life just to make myself richer, or embiggen myself, I want to say. Number 24, Kouri sought fame and fortune. He talked about this too recently in the closing rebuttal. Kouri sought fame and fortune by becoming a children's book author. She can't spell worth a damn is what I wrote. We can tell by her text messages, and of course, we all misspell things. I'm not coming down hard on her because of that. It's just consistently throughout her letters and throughout her text messages, there's a lot, her Google searches, tons of misspellings. So she hired the ghostwriter for her book. She wanted to seemingly restore her reputation. She wanted to enrich herself, like the prosecutor said. You know, she wanted to sell 100,000 books. And in the meantime, she was, texting her brother Ronnie as the whole process was going on and talking about her book launches. Now we know she planned a second book titled Mommy, How Far Away is Heaven? That was due in April 2023 or May 1st, but she was arrested and that foiled her plans. I feel like God was maybe saying, look, girl, that's enough. Like you allegedly did this to your husband, took away this great father. They say everyone agrees he's a great father. He was, took this man away from his 3 boys. You think about it, they could have had this man his entire life. They could have had their dad at their weddings. He could have seen his grandchildren one day. But these boys are like so young. What were they, 7, 9, and 10? Or they were very young. I don't know how old they are now. Young boys took their father away, wrote one book, doing this book tour basically. And then she planned this second book, Mommy, How Far Away is Heaven? Oh, I'm this single mom, poor me, I'm a widow. That's what Kouri's defense attorney was asking, widow or witch? And I'm like, well, she could be both, in a sad way. Black widow, they had a little tete-a-tete about that whole phraseology, but it was fine. I love Judge Mrazek. He's been excellent. He did not declare a mistrial just because someone used the phrase black widow. Anyway, Kouri told her brother about laying the groundwork for another big book, and I'm wondering, maybe she was planning some big memoir about being maybe a widowed single mother of 3 boys. Was she looking like for her next husband? Her defense attorney made sure to say, well, no way Kouri would leave her rich husband. And they talked about Eric's affairs too. We'll get to the end of that at the last point, 33, where Kouri wrote an email about Eric's affairs. She wrote an email about it to the detectives. I'm wondering if Kouri was planning on this big memoir. Kouri's defense attorney is saying, oh, who would leave rich Eric and, get with Grossman, who basically, he didn't have any money. She put him up, let him live in some house for free. Well, Kouri did text Grossman, whether she was playing him or not, or trying to get him to do the deed or whatever. She did text him about, hey, we can live this life. Kouri wanted to be the breadwinner. I think she wanted to be top dog. She'll talk about, I didn't want to be just a stay-at-home mom in the email coming up. So it doesn't matter that Grossman was a handyman or whatever. That might have been Kouri's ideal world if she wanted him. Her defense attorney was saying she wouldn't leave rich Eric just to get with this Baroque handyman. And on the surface, people might go, yeah, that sounds like it. But if you think deeper and look deeper into Kouri's own text messages, she told Grossman, we can live in the guest house maybe, rent out the Midway monstrosity for 15 grand a day or whatever. And, she planned on having riches. Now, whether she would have stayed with Grossman or found someone else, that remains to be seen. But that doesn't mean she didn't poison her husband. Number 25, Kouri has attempted to paint Eric's sisters as these bitter bees and Eric as this, current pill popper who must have gotten himself into trouble. Initially, when it suited her, Kouri would say, no, Eric didn't do drugs. He didn't do drugs. And then they do the part in the body cam where she's like, oh, it's like she has both hands. She looks up. It's more like a look of surprise. It's when she found out he was going to be autopsied. She had to know he was going to have an autopsy. He was so young. But then it suited her to switch the story up when they found the fentanyl in his system. And then the thing that made sense was, oh, I better, paint Eric as this drug dealer, and I better get my brother in the walk the dog letter to, convince him to tell cops, yeah, Eric, I heard this conversation and Eric was saying he's going to Mexico and to get pills and, besmirch his reputation. Number 26. According to witness testimony, Kouri worried in the case of a divorce, the boys would favor Eric because he would have more money, and she feared his family would paint her in a bad light. Now, that might have been a really real fear, okay? I've seen divorce cases, like I watched Chris Rock. We went to see him in person in his, comedy routine, and he's pretty honest about divorce. That's what I like about him. But he did talk about a little bit of competition there when him and his wife divorced, Malak Rock, and of course it's jokes and everything, but it stems from reality too. He's like, trying to butter his girls up, like, oh, don't you want to come over to Dad's house? I have whatever, Lady Gaga over here. It's sad. You don't, of course, want to do that. But when people get divorced, sometimes it's like, oh, Mom's house is better or Dad's house is better. So Kouri, according to the witness testimony, had a real fear. One of the reasons, people say, why not just get divorced? Why not just get divorced when people kill their spouses? It's not justified. She shouldn't have been a means to an end to do away with her husband, but the fear might have still been real that if she were to go ahead and divorce Eric, she wouldn't have gotten as much money as she wanted. She didn't even know a lot of the stuff she wouldn't get. The boys obviously loved their dad, and she was afraid, oh, the boys will always want to be with him, I guess. And he would, have more money. He would still have his successful C&E stonemasonry business. Kouri's financial misdeeds would all be exposed. And then she feared the Richins family, like painting her in a bad light. To me, all these things, they're real fears, but in no way is it like carte blanche or a green light to go harm someone. All of these cases I see, if they would have just gotten divorced, they would have gotten over it. It would have been fine. Number 27, Eric never spoke of doing himself in. Kouri did admit in text messages to her brother on May 24th, 2023. So that was talked about too. So no matter what, the private investigator went in there to determine, is this a case of someone who did this to himself or was it homicide? No matter how many times people tried to say, could it have been him doing it to himself on purpose or accidentally, or did someone do this to him? It continually came up that Eric, he wasn't the type. Even in Kouri's own messages, Kouri admitted it. Other people did not find him to be the type to want to do that to himself. Number 28, entries found in the orange notebook in the family home during a search. Inside of that notebook, Kouri was writing out, what she wanted people to believe. She claimed, she's mom of the year, basically. The last night of Eric's life, she was reading books to the kids around 8:30. But then she wrote Eric had been on his phone most of the evening. He was in this texting war with a hunting guide from Mexico and a few other people trying to get his horns back to the U.S. So he was a hunter. And of course, you don't know if any of this is true. Some of it may have been corroborated, some of it wasn't. They went over all the details. Kouri wrote it was around 9 or 9:15 p.m. He was screaming mad at these guys and threw his phone. At that point, he said, let's go have a celebration drink. The following day, I was closing on a huge investment home in Midway. So Kouri is writing this self-serving journal entry, painting Eric once again to look like this ogre. The last night of his life, he's on the phone arguing with some guide from Mexico. He's arguing, he's throwing his phone, he's screaming, he's all mad. It's almost like trying to introduce mystery, culprits. Oh, he's on the phone screaming with these people. Maybe like it could have been them. And then all of a sudden, he turns to Kouri and says, let's have a celebration drink, Okay. Because the following day, Kouri was working, closing this huge investment, which plays into the story, but she wants to make it seem like she's just this top dog, this big financial wizard. She wrote, I had been working on this deal for 4 months and closing day was finally here and Eric and I were going to toast for the closing. We went into the kitchen and both started, I believe she means, grabbing ingredients for a Moscow Mule and a lemon drop shot. He was going on and on. That part cuts off and then her notes say Eric was home by 6 p.m. or 6:30 that day, fighting with Mexican. They had a drink in bed. It's like, was it in the kitchen or was it in the bed? He drank half, brushed his teeth, They go over Kouri's inconsistencies every time she describes that night. Did she really go off and see about her son and come back later and then Eric was cold? Or does she remember him being on the phone, or was he falling asleep? Was he sleeping? Inconsistencies. Number 29, Kouri Richins' mother. People are talking about this little factor. Lisa Darden, she was investigated in the 2006 death of her romantic partner. This is something I'd heard of. Now, the mom was never convicted for anything. Let me make that clear. Detective Jeff O'Driscoll, he did investigate Lisa Darden's past. He wrote in an unsealed warrant, search warrant. It was discovered that in 2006, Richins' mother, Lisa Darden, was living with an adult female with whom she was having a romantic relationship, and in April of that year, her romantic partner died unexpectedly. Now, the autopsy report revealed that the victim's immediate cause of death was drug poisoning from an overdose of oxy. The warrant stated further investigation showed Lisa had been named as the beneficiary of her partner's estate a short time before her death. That's really interesting. The female did have current prescriptions for oxy and reportedly struggled with abusing her meds. Now, of course, I'm not saying Lisa had anything to do with her partner's death or overdose, but part of me wonders, do things like this play in a daughter's mind? Did it play in Kouri's mind like, my mom's partner lost her life and, guess what? She had just been made the beneficiary and my mom ended up getting money that way. Just like I did that comparison video about Caleb Flynn, did he look at the other case we compared him to, that other pastor whose name escapes me at the moment, who was never convicted of his wife's killing? But I wonder, did Caleb, look at this and get inspired by it? Food for thought. Number 30, Bloodworth said in his closing argument about Kouri, she was the only other adult in the home at the time. Nobody else killed Eric Richins. She had the means, she had the motive, the motivation. She was, I believe, desperate. What, is she going to blame it on her 3 little sons? No, of course not. They wouldn't know how to do this or what to do. But Kouri was there with Eric. It wasn't like other people were staying there that night. Someone else was there to slip something in his drink. Number 31, Kouri needed cash ASAP. The settlement deadline on the Midway mansion was March 4th, 2022. And that's the same day that Eric lost his life. Had Kouri thought about doing this ever before? And was this extra motivation? Was that why there was 5 times the lethal dose found in his system if she put it there? Did she previously ever try to poison him and just not give him enough, only gave him enough to get him sick, or not give him what she felt was the right illicit substance? Did she make sure to dump enough in his drink or something to make sure she got the job done with this Michael Jackson stuff, which really isn't propofol, but anyway. Number 32, the defendant, Kouri, fraudulently extracted $45,000 from her best friend, got her best friend kicked out of her house. They signed this residential lease agreement. We talked about this with the option to purchase. And her friend was paying Kouri $2,900 a month in rent with an option to buy the home for $490,000. The friend got on the stand and described how she thought all this money was going towards the house that she would eventually own. She's living there with her children, her partner, and everyone. And ultimately, the friend gets evicted with her family. Now, it's like Kouri's attorney tried to explain that away. I love criminal defense attorneys. Everyone hates them until you need one, but some I don't really like. It's a job. I know we all deserve our due process. I wouldn't want to do it unless it's like the Innocence Project or something, trying to help someone wrongly convicted. Anyway, Kouri's attorney got up there in her closing argument and said, oh, that money wasn't earmarked specifically for the down payment on her friend's home. Kouri thought basically rob Peter to pay Paul. She would come up with the money later and that could go towards the home. Just trying to do the Jedi mind trick and make everything for a second sound like, oh yeah, no, but no. Finally, number 33. I saved this for last because it's best and it's the longest. Thank God I found this email. This email from April 19th, 2023, Kouri's email, days before she was arrested. She wrote it to Detective O'Driscoll, Chad Hoffmeyer, and Detective Frank Root. Chad Hoffmeyer is the lieutenant of the Communications Division at the Summit County, Utah Sheriff's Office. And at the end of this email, Kouri's trying to relate to him on a personal level, trying to butter him up a little bit. Okay, the highlights of this email, rather, say, because they had just, I guess, left Kouri's house or speaking to her, whatever. And then she's like, oh, wait a minute, I might have told you guys some things wrong. Oh, we got actually married in this year instead of this year, and maybe this and this. And they're replying, and then she sends this back. She delves into her marriage a little bit more. She said, Eric's affair was the same year I, quote, moved out. And that's when the trust was created, basically. The trust was created as well as him looking into a divorce. I moved my clothes out one weekend to make Eric understand I'm not kidding about leaving him if he doesn't end things with blank, redacted. I did this on a Thursday or Friday while he was out of town. I was home by Monday. So I guess she's trying to explain why sometimes she stayed other places, and she blamed it on this affair Eric allegedly had. She said, I never stayed another night at that house. Eric and I figured things out like most couples do. She's talking about Eric. He changed her name in his phone. Blank was her name, so I wouldn't know about it. And honestly, we worked things out after that. I never went through his phone again to see if he changed it back, but you have his phone and can check. So unless it escapes me, I don't remember any woman ever coming forward speaking about having an adulterous affair with Eric. I know at some points, she says affair, and then later I hear it was an emotional affair. Now, I'm not trying to downplay emotional versus physical, whatever. Okay, an affair is an affair, and if Eric did it, it's not right. We know Kouri's boyfriend had a lot of information. There was a lot of info about, Kouri's boyfriend, and he was literally there, and he seemed really hurt and all that, her affair partner. But as for Eric's affair partner, I don't know if we ever found out who this woman allegedly was, or Kouri is just so disingenuous. She is just such a liar that you can't even believe any parts of her story. Everything is such a conflict. I don't know if she's just saying this to describe why she stayed somewhere else, but she gets more into it, the lies. In the same email, she had the nerve to say, no, Eric and I did not have financial problems ever. And I'm thinking, in reality, Kouri's money problems and implosions really began in earnest, like they said, in October 2021. And we don't even know what's going to happen with all the rest of the civil case and everything. Of course, this is the big case, so we'll see how the fallout is. But Kouri, oh my goodness. Maybe Kouri began to look at Eric as one of those rich, snooty people, and if he did have an affair, and if she's like, oh, I'm home pregnant, having the babies, and he just has me here like the maid and the nanny, even though she did talk about them hiring a nanny in this same email. Did she feel like she had to get revenge against Eric? That's part of my deep feeling with this case. Like, she had to get her vengeance against him. He was rich when he met her. She was very young. He's 8 years older than her, I believe. Somewhere there's a bit of a range of age. And did she feel like, oh my goodness, I've just got to overcome him. I've got to be better than him. I've got to have my comeuppance. But this was funny too. Okay, she's claiming they never had any financial problems ever, which is a lie. We obviously know that, she stole from him. And anyway, she continued to write, yes, Eric made more money than me. Do you make more money than your wives? She literally wrote that to these law enforcement officials. I'm like, what? And then she had the nerve to write, have I ever been financially reliant on Eric in the last 5 years? Absolutely not. It's like, come on, Kouri. Like, that's what she wanted. The state's attorney spoke today about Kouri wanted so much to have this image of wealth that she literally, the way she did her books were so incorrect. She could have actually made more money. Like, she took a loss with the IRS just to pretend she had more money. I mean, it made no sense. This is interesting. Kouri wrote, Eric did not want me working because, one, his first wife cheated on him with a guy at work. Now, mind you, okay, that's fine. His first wife, Linda, they got divorced. Maybe that's what really happened. She ended up getting killed in a DUI crash. But, it's like Kouri did have to throw this dig in here. Eric didn't want me working because his first wife cheated on him with a guy at work. Like, she has to just throw that in there for whatever reason. She could have just said, Eric really didn't want me working. He was afraid maybe something would happen, but she just wanted to blame it on the first wife. Kouri wrote, Eric wanted us to live the typical conservative life where the man takes care of his family and the wife is a homemaker, wife, mom, and that's it. That is not my personality and not the way I was raised. I am very independent. Good on you, Kouri. There's nothing wrong with being independent. There's nothing wrong with either the wife, the husband, anyone being the breadwinner, both people grinding, everyone working hard in the family. Who cares? However it works out. But Kouri took it to a degree, it seems, where she had to succeed. Like, in her mind, she had to be a millionaire. Again, by any means necessary. She wrote, even when I stayed home with my kids the first few years, I was in grad school for years because I wanted to be more and do more than be a homemaker, and I did. First of all, God bless all the homemakers out there, and stay-at-home moms or whatever. It's good on Kouri. She was able to go to grad school. Even when she was with her kids, she was able to do stuff. Nothing wrong with that. But you feel this sense, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to do more than be a homemaker or to be a stay-at-home mom. There's nothing wrong if that's all you want to be, whatever, however it works out for your family. And it's not just a stay-at-home mom, and it's not just a whatever. But reading between the lines, Kouri is adamant against being viewed a certain way. She wrote, and when I did and started my business, it took some adjusting, but Eric and I were fine with it. We hired my nanny and everything worked out. So a lot of couples go through that adjustment. Yeah, some people aren't cut out to stay home the whole time. That's fine, But Kouri just has to, we hired my nanny. There's this whole air of, I'm better than this, stemming from some deep-rooted hurts likely from her childhood that she never healed. She also continued to write, I know what time I went to bed that night. There is no hole in my story, so they must have told her, look, Kouri, stuff isn't adding up. She wrote, hopefully by obtaining 4 phone record documentation, you guys can see this too. Happy to clarify or provide anything else you may need. I just want this over. I just want our lives back and to move on and grieve and mourn my husband without looking over my shoulder constantly for you guys or the idiotic private investigator or the Richins family. Whatever I can do to help close this out, just ask. I'll give you or tell you whatever you want to know. I'm sure she's like, whatever you want to know, just to, so I can go on and live my life and not have to worry about a silly little criminal trial. She wrote, please check with the lab on those gummies. So, by any means necessary, she's trying to blame Eric. Either he imbibed it through, gummies, or someone sent it to him, or, he liked to pop pills, or this or that. Like the state attorney said, there's no evidence of some of the stuff Kouri is saying. Like even in here, she was saying they went to counseling, and he just said, there's no evidence of that. Did we hear a counselor take the stand and talk about their marriage issues? I don't think we did. So some of the stuff I wonder, Kouri was just like saying, okay, it's like in a neat little box. She said somewhere in here, we went to counseling a little bit, it wasn't for us, but we figured it out. She's trying to make it seem like, yeah, Eric cheated on me, and I moved out just for a weekend and I was back and everything was fine. Like, stop looking any further. No financial problems, nothing. And check with the lab on those gummies. And then P.S. Chad, I hear you also know our good friends, and their name is redacted. Their son and my son play on the same soccer team. When Eric passed, she said that so nicely, wrote that. When Eric passed, blank took over coaching. You guys could even chat with them if you feel necessary. Kouri Richins. So she's trying to connect with these detectives on a human level. Like, we run in the same circles. Our sons play soccer together. Check with them, chat with them if you feel necessary. They'll tell you how great I am. Oh, that Kouri. Anyway, Isaiah 47:10, you have trusted in your wickedness and have said, no one sees me. Your wisdom and knowledge mislead you when you say to yourself, I am, and there is none besides me. Where Kouri is not the I am, okay? Kouri. I love this one photograph Bloodworth put up, to explain, like the way I was trying to explain with the circumstantial evidence, the rain. He puts up this photo of like the butt. Is it the butt of an elephant? I'll put it up here. It's somewhere. Oh, I'll find it on Twitter. But anyway, it's like, it grabs your attention. It's like an elephant or a rhino or something. And it's like this big explosion, unfortunately. And it's like the shadow of a person standing there. It's excrement on the wall. And it's like, you don't have to be there to watch it happen to know it happened. You can pretty much surmise what happened, with this photo. So, okay, jury watch. We will see what happens with Kouri's trial. It's been a long time. I feel like they are going to deliberate for quite a while. Verdict watch. Here we go. And the latest poll numbers, they're still saying like about 90%, 90.7% they would vote Kouri guilty. I want the jury to do a great job. I want the jury to do a great job, to take their time. I seriously want them to get it right. I don't want any, ineffective counsel or any reasons to overturn any convictions that might come. Some people are afraid. Some people are like, oh no, I'm afraid this will go the way of Casey Anthony. I don't know. Let's give jurors credit if they're really there to do their job, and a lot of them really do. They take this seriously. It's not about just trying to blame Kouri just because the Richins sisters don't like her or didn't like her or whatever. It's taking the total 4 years worth of evidence, basically, going over it with a fine-tooth comb, everything they did released to us, everything we finally got to see in trial. And it's not even about judging the way a widow grieves. And people kind of miss the point, like Kouri's attorney tried to say, oh, everyone grieves differently and some people might grieve like that. Of course, we know that's true. People might react differently, but when you see red flag after red flag, the 911 call, all her hesitation, all her financial machinations behind the scene before he died, all these other instances of, it could have been, sure, an allergic reaction Eric had, but, was Kouri always involved when he was like getting sick or some allergic reaction? It's not just about the fact that women tend to use poison more as their weapon of choice. It's not one thing that, it's just like, oh, just that little one thing makes you think she might have done this. No, it's the totality of so many things we've learned, so many things, and hopefully just not people twisting them around to try and make it seem like, oh no, it's not basically what we're looking at. But again, like I always say, God knows the truth. May God's will be done in this case. May justice reign. No matter what the verdict is, I hope Kouri can heal whatever it is deep-seated within her that has made her act the way she's acted. Who cares about, we don't have to have this glamorous lifestyle and pretend we have all this money. I mean, I tell you guys all the time, heck, I'm paying off the IRS, I don't really come on here and pretend to be like something I'm not. I don't need to pretend like I'm this big, smart person and all these things. It's like I look at myself, God knows who I am. I look at myself through his eyes, and that gives me value. I think Kouri looked for, I've got to have the Midway mansion closing. I got to be this successful real estate flipper. Like the more she went after it is the more she screwed herself up, all the finances. And her attorney tried to make it sound like, oh, she's just a wee little mom and, she might get things wrong. I never use QuickBooks. I use Excel. She might get things wrong here and there. She's trying to like really downplay all these crazy financial moves. The heart of it is, did Kouri really take it that far where it's not just stealing from Eric, not just saying he cheated on her and she did the same, not just all these questions. Did she take it as far as literally poisoning him? Literally saying, thinking, game over, thinking, I'm gonna, ring the death knell against you, cut you off from your boys. I'll be the mom and I'll get all your stuff. And then realize, oh, nope. That's not how it's going to end, Kouri. Anyway, we're on verdict watch. How long will it take them? Hours? Days? A lot of evidence to cover. Will we get a unanimous vote? What's going to happen? It's a heavy case, and I'm glad we're finally towards the end of it. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know below how you would vote. What do you think? If you followed it as closely, or even if you're just jumping into this case and just found out about it, let me know how you're feeling. I like to see, which way people are going. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.